yourselves. This is like explore what you like, what you not like. Try this or that game on yourself, and find out what you like. Then learn to express it, and then find a collaboration partner to play. Basically, make it playful, make it easy. Sexuality is not just about, sorry to say it, fucking.
Absolutely.
It's all about relating actually, and being playful about it. Is it?
And I will say that sex, no matter whether it's casual or in a relationship, is always better when it's intimate.
Yes.
And the way that we create intimacy is through being vulnerable. And one way to be vulnerable is to risk your voice, to like saying what it is that you want in the face of the fear of not doing that often. And to be explorative and risk offering touches that your partner might not like. That feels vulnerable to not always be the best at everything. But it's through that exploration and that willingness to kind of bump along and make sure that you're welcoming each other's voices and honoring your own, that we can really come to deep pleasure and actually more emotional intimacy, which makes everything so much easier.
If you were to ask your younger self something to tell them, what would you do? What would you go back in time and say, right,
that one thing.
That one thing that you go, there could be many, but just pick one.
Well, you know, this is unrelated to what we've been talking about, but since I'm traveling, what I'm really realizing is that I wish I knew in my teens and early 20s how amazing traveling alone is. Both for the opportunities, again, for courage and vulnerability and self-exploration, as well as how many fantastically, amazingly inspiring and different people are out there. And that when you travel alone, you actually interface a lot more often. And how much it just blows your perspective wide open. And really, that's what we're talking about, is rethinking. Rethinking sex, rethinking so many areas of our life. And when we take ourselves outside of our comfort bubble and push ourselves to talk with people unlike ourselves, and when we're traveling alone, believe it or not, you really do push yourself, then it's such a ripe area for growth.
Awesome. We've been actually talking a lot about sharing and how growth happens most of the time, and creation and learning happens through sharing. Meeting other people who are totally different to you, from different backgrounds, different experiences, coming together and just sharing makes miracles come true.
Because that little one story sometimes sparks a whole new starting off. And you go, I could do that, or that's what I need, or that's what I need to hear.
And this is what we're doing here right now. So do you have any book or something that you would say is like the book on rethinking sexuality?
Oh, wow.
Well, it doesn't have to be just a book that got you to that moment again.
Well, I mean, I would say a book that's been very important for me has been called Whipping Girl by Julia Serrano. And it's actually more about transgender rights. And my dissertation was on trans discrimination in the workplace. And I think that one thing that was really important that I got out of this that applies to everybody, whether or not you're trans or not, is this idea of something called oppositional sexism.
Oppositional sexism. What does that mean?
It's this idea that men and women are inherently different, and we embody very different sets of characteristics and attributes and personality traits. And this is a very false idea that we've been force-fed. And in fact, we are trained to see differences when in reality there are far more similarities. And I think one thing that invades so many aspects of our society and permits for cisphobia and heterophobia and sexism to permeate is this idea of oppositional
sexism. As a baby, there's a certain time in the womb where we change to male or female. There is, like, we start off with kind of
but
both
male
female
and female
and then we
is
change.
sex, the masculine and feminine is gender, right?
So it's not about the organ.
It's not about the organ, right? And in
but
fact,
that's what I mean. That's what I mean, because we both start as the same thing.
We do.
That's
we're just a lump, and then it's like either we develop this little penis or we don't, right?
Right.
It's a little extra.
That's what I'm saying.
But here's a misconception: is that whether or not we develop a penis or vagina or something in between, that somehow defines our gender. And that's not the case.
No.
Right?
No.
And that's actually what cis-sexism is all about, is this belief that people with penises must be masculine and people with vaginas must be feminine.
But I agree, it doesn't have to be that way.
No.
However, I sometimes find that it might be through conditioning, that could be true, that the thinking and sensing of men and women is somewhat different, priorities and so forth. So they're not exactly the same as in what they like and how they go about stuff.
Sure, and there is some biological and genetic motivation for that, but so much of it is socialization. Is boys are taught how to be boys and girls are taught how to be girls. And the shame in all of that is that it really limits our creative potential. because we get tunnel vision.
So you kind of cut out that female side of your guy, for example, not allowing it in. But what would happen if I would allow it in, or if you? Oh, wait, he has a good female side in him.
I think
He's a very good female.
I mean, I personally think the best partners are the ones that can embody traits from both. I mean, if I'm with a man, I want him to be emotionally expressive, and sensitive, intuitive, creative.
Yes. Oh, beautiful.
Right? And
he's
if
all
I'm,
that. This is why I like my
what
breath.
a keeper.
Oh, he's such a keeper.
And if I'm with a woman, I want her to have a strong voice, right? And to be determined and to persevere and to be passionate and do all of the, do all these things that many people stereotypically think of as masculine.
Yeah.
And without all of that, like, what is life? Honestly, all of that. Like, especially if you don't have a partner that is exactly the same, that wants to find it all and go to the top.
Yes,
and we get over the fall over the edge, and then we go, okay, we've done that. Let's go back to the top.
Right. So whenever men are criticized for being wussies or sissy boys, and women are criticized for being bitches or somehow being not feminine enough, to look in the face of that criticism and rethink why it is that people are saying what they're saying, and choose for yourself what actually has you feel most expressed, most alive.
I mean, usually, like, people will criticize a lot. It's basically, or most of the time, about them, an issue they have with their own personality or whatever it may be, other than what they actually see or perceive. You only perceive what's already inside of you or what you struggle with, right?
And when it comes to sex and relationships, really, I mean, you're only seeking to please your partner anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So who cares what society says?
It's all coming from the heart. It's all coming from a place of love at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
That's a beautiful statement. So
nice way to finish.
Yeah, nice way to finish. It's all coming from a place of love.
A quick, what's your website? Tell people where they can find you.
Yes, if they want to know more about rethinking sexuality.
Go to my website, which is www.ackfogarty, that's spelled FOGARTY .com, or you can email me at ackfogarty@gmail.com.
Perfect. And it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us here. And I've learned so much. I'm going to go out tonight and say no.
Maybe.
Yes.
No unless. Yay! We're going to have a date soon. Okay.
And tell me all about it.
Yes, I will for sure.
Exactly.
Yes, and it's not you.
Oh.
Yeah.
You can buy one too.
Yeah.
Yes.
What are you doing tonight?
All right, let's finish it here. Okay, bye guys.
Bye.
Bye.
But I'm just my own ultimate man. I'm out there helping guys really go from being the overthinker to the people who are afraid of failing, the people who are afraid of, having that lack of self-belief in themselves, really moving them past all of those into action, being the action taker, being the one that's willing to fail forward, but safely. And finally,